Welcome back. We continue our conversation this morning on Alzheimer's disease. Joining me now is Dr. Monica Parker with the Goizueta Alzheimer's Disease Research Center at Emory University. Yeah, a long title because you guys do a lot there, certainly. Tell us right now where we kind of stand on this issue and if there's anything that we can do personally for our health to possibly prevent Alzheimer's in the future. Is that the case?
Actually, that's where we're looking at in research. Right now, research up until very recently has been focused on the end of the disease. What we're learning in research now is that there are a lot of things that we can do to forestall and prevent certain diseases, and Alzheimer's is one of them. Yes, genetic predisposition is one of those things that's a risk factor, but those genes turn on in certain environments. So one of the things that we're learning is that there are things that we can do to prevent certain types of dementia. Alzheimer's is one of the most commonly diagnosed dementia. Of course, there's several others, but in terms of research, disease prevention is modifying your lifestyle, maintaining an ideal body weight, fixing things like making sure that you get enough sleep, maintaining an ideal body weight, getting regular exercise, remaining socially engaged. These are things that help contribute to good overall brain health. So the longer you do that, the sooner you start doing that, the better. One of the key things that's a risk factor for all dementia is poorly managed chronic disease. So for those of us who have high blood pressure, we know that there's a 20-year association, 20-year history of hypertension that's been well treated or untreated, and the onset of dementia in later life. So what you do in midlife kind of affects what happens to you later on. So maintaining ideal body weight so that you don't get hypertension, so that you don't develop diabetes and cardiovascular disease, which is a major risk factor for different types of dementia. Those are things that we can do. Those are things that all of us can do.
Stay as healthy and as active as
Yes.
possible. And we talked at the beginning of the show about women, more women than men developing Alzheimer's. Why is that the case?
It's not because we live longer, and we already know we live longer, but there may be something about the hormonal mix in women that predisposes women toward Alzheimer's disease versus men. That is an area in research, like gender differences between Alzheimer's prevalence and manifestation, that is being worked on in research. So we don't have all of the answers, but being female is a risk factor for Alzheimer's, as is living longer. The risk for developing Alzheimer's is greater, certainly, the longer that you live. And here in Georgia, we know that nearly 50% of the people over the age of 85 have some type of cognitive dysfunction. So living longer is a risk factor, as is being of female gender, yes.
Right, and there was a point in time when we thought living longer was much better. Yeah, it's unfortunate that has to be the case in this instance. And for the people with Alzheimer's, what's the average length that someone generally suffers with this?
We used to say 7 to 10 years, 7 to 9 years, but because a lot of people who have a dementing disorder aren't physically unwell, their brain doesn't work, but most of them are really fairly healthy. So you can have somebody who's had a diagnosis of Alzheimer's for 10 to 20 years. One of my own patients lived to be 103, wow. And she had a nearly 20-year history of diagnosis of Alzheimer's.
Are we any closer to finding a cure? There have been some breakthroughs, haven't there?
There are some breakthroughs, but we're finding that the medications and the interventions that are being discovered need to be implemented sooner rather than later. Not late life, but more early life. So we're looking at some of those things. We don't have a definitive cure right now. We don't have a definitive drug that, yes, reverses the course of Alzheimer's, much like a chemotherapeutic drug reverses the course of cancer. We do not have that just yet. We're working on it. But more importantly, we're finding that earlier methods for diagnosing and evaluating the disease are going to be more helpful to us in the long run than looking for the end-all, cure-all disease modifying drug. We haven't gotten there yet.
And certainly in talking about culturally, are there some differences in terms of who could possibly be diagnosed with it compared to others, say in African American or Hispanic communities?
Yes. In the Alzheimer's Association, basically has done research to show that African Americans are twice as likely to develop Alzheimer's versus European Americans, and Hispanic Americans are 1.5 times as likely. We're not exactly sure why that exists, but there are some studies to show that the higher prevalence of cardiovascular disease predisposes those groups to vascular diseases that affect your brain and Alzheimer's in general.
Dr. Monica Parker, thank you so much. We appreciate your time today.
You're welcome.
Some very important insight as the conversation continues this morning. Make sure you stay with us. The scope of Alzheimer's disease, it continues to grow. Now it has become a public health problem. We'll talk about that after the break.